Hi everyone, I'm Jacob. A new challenger has entered the arena. So I know Tony and Ian did their intros for this already, but I was not there for that, so this is my intro. It's a separate episode. So answering the same questions that they did, a useless skill that I have is that I can burp on command. It does absolutely nothing, and they're usually very weak burps, so it's extra useless. But that's about it. All of my other skills are ridiculously useful. I'm very overpowered. It's also a bad idea to have me on my own episode, sort of, because I'm somewhat unregulated. Um, Something that bothers me that doesn't seem to bother anyone else. This doesn't fit the category very well, but because I have met a lot of other people who are also bothered by this, but not everyone else is as bothered. The sound of chewing sometimes makes me want to punch people in the throat, but that's I'm learning to not hate it as much, or at least not to hate the people who chew loudly. Mostly because when I was growing up in my house, the sound of chewing was almost outlawed. My mom prevented anyone from smacking their lips ever when they were like eating cereal and other things like that. So it wasn't really a sound I was used to. And then when I got to college, I started hearing it a lot more from roommates and random people and all kinds of stuff. And I realized, like, wow, this is the most annoying sound in the world. Something that I like that everyone else seems to dislike is a video game for the Wii called The Conduit. It's Nintendo's very, very short-lived attempt at having their own name brand first-person shooter sci-fi game. It was kind of intended to be a little bit like Halo. You had something else. The main character of it is supposed to be like this kind of macho military guy who fends off an alien invasion, and there's a big conspiracy, and there's supposed to be a big twist. And the multiplayer was really jacked up because people had figured out all of the bugs in the game, and they would do things like turn the submachine gun bullets into rockets, which actually wasn't that hard to do. I did it a couple times. And yeah, the main character of that game is named Michael Ford, which is just a super generic white protagonist name. Although I guess Master Chief is technically just named John, so there's that. Something that I dislike that everyone else seems to like. This isn't. Once again, I'm stretching this a little bit. The plot of Phantom of the Opera. I really like the music, and I really like a couple things, but the Phantom by himself I feel like sometimes you're supposed to empathize with him, but I can't. He's so strange and murderous that it's hard for me to empathize with him. Kind of along similar lines, perhaps. This isn't everyone else seems to like, but in 11th grade we had to read a book called In Cold Blood, and it's supposed to be this really like interesting book, but I felt like the only thing that I learned at the end of reading it was that you shouldn't kill people, and I knew that before I read it, and I didn't really need to read 350 pages of prose to understand that concept. So but it's critically acclaimed or whatever, so that might not be true. Okay. Real life alignment with an example. So I feel like my real life alignment waffles between lawful good and true neutral, because in things that don't matter, I'm true neutral. So for instance, in board games, I or maybe chaotic neutral is a maybe better description. I refer to myself as an agent of chaos, and I try to make the most illogical things happen. And actually, I did win a board game doing that, because my opponent was expecting me to make a move and had planned out all of their moves based on the most logical thing that would have happened. But because I did the thing that made no sense to anyone that was watching the game, I really threw them off, and then I was able to win. So, and then in various other games too, I don't always make the smart choice either for myself or for the rest of the people, for the board state in general. I do what I feel like, do what I want in that example. But in things where like there's real consequences for real people, I try and make good decisions. Like I can't think of a super good example. I mean, give money to poor people. I guess that's an example of lawful good, maybe. So that's about it. I think that covers all the questions. So, make sure to like and subscribe. No, please don't do either of those things. Yeah. So this podcast is going to be about nerd stuff. And I think